think back of India-Australia test matches over the last decade specifically, you go back to Australia's tour of India in 2013, they lost 4-0, but they showed spunk, they showed a fighting spirit. Of course, that was the tour when the Australian test team was haunted by the homework scandal, a lot of those nonsense that led to 4 players being banned for a particular test match. That was that era, but let bygones be bygones. But what I'm talking about is Australia's fighting spirit, and then that India-Australia test series down under in 2014-15, where Virat Kohli famously scored those 4 test match hundreds. Again, India lost 2-0, but there was resilience from that camp. Out of that, that Australia rivalry with India began to slide. In the sense, India asserted that level of domination. Of course, India hosted Australia in 2016, 2017. India won 2-1. But again, it was a very, very closely fought series. Australia winning that first match in Pune on a raging turner. Steve Smith's genius, Steve O'Keefe, was brilliant on that tour. But then, of course, India bouncing back in that Bengaluru test match, which was again such a dogfight between these two great test-playing nations. But something changed thereafter. 2018-19, India went to Australia, beat them 2-1 to become the first Asian team to win a test series in Australia. A lot of the Aussies argued, look, it was an understrength team without Steve Smith, David Warner, etc., etc. But then, a few years later again, India, this time understrength themselves. By the time they reached the final test match in Gabba, Australia, playing to full strength and potential, again lost a series at home to the Indians. Now for this series, the ongoing test series, the Border-Gavaskar trophy, a lot of them expected Australia to fight really hard. In fact, many of us thought it could be a closely fought series. But look at what happened in Nagpur, look at what happened in Delhi. It's a debacle, it's a disaster of massive proportions. Have Australia lost the stomach for a fight? There was this whining and complaining before the Nagpur test over the pitch, propagated by the media. And look at what happened in Delhi. They looked in control in the first innings. They scored 263, restricted India to 262, had a slender 1-run lead. Then they started looking so good on that second afternoon. It looked like it could be a competitive test match. In fact, the Indians said later that they were looking to at least chase down 220, 225. But again, Australia lost 9 wickets in that morning session, and India romped home to a famous victory, retaining the Border-Gavaskar trophy again. Of course, winning it in 2016-17, retained it twice thereafter in Australia, and then retaining it for the 3rd time, which means India now have the Border-Gavaskar trophy in their possession for 4 consecutive series. Australia, meanwhile, mind-boggling shot selection, sweeps, reverse sweeps. The great Alan Border was scathing in his criticism, wondering what happened. Ravindra Jadeja Riley said, look, the sweep shot is not the best option against me in these conditions. So you feel a little bad, if you followed Australian cricket for so many years, the last 2 or 3 decades, they've been so dominant in every part of the world except India, of course. They won a test series last year in 2004, which was almost 2 decades back. You expected Australia to come back harder. And Australia were in good form. Not only at home, they went to Pakistan and won a test series there. Historic test series win, going to Pakistan after all these years on flat pitches, on those roads in Pakistan. They won a test series there. In Sri Lanka, they drew a 1-1, but again, they were so competitive. Somehow in India, and mind you, the pitches haven't been that bad. They haven't been that, that supportive to the spinners. Of course, it has aided spin as you would expect, pitches in the subcontinent, but nothing really nerve-wracking there at all. Just poor shot selection, poor temperament from the Australians, and some very, very confusing selection policies. David Warner, of course, being ruled out after the first innings of that Delhi test match due to concussion. Matt Rencher comes in, Travis Head goes into open, looked good, but overall terrible shot selection from the Australians, and again going with 3 finger spinners possibly are not giving the Australians enough variety. But they will face a lot of criticism now from now on till that test match in Indore, and they would desperately hope to bounce back and do something worthwhile in that 3rd test match, because the series, well, the best that the Aussies could do now is to draw it, win those 2 matches in Indore and then in Ahmedabad. This is Rajesh Gupta bringing this to you for India Today YouTube.